Welcome to Film Freaks. This is Justin Llewellyn.
And Eddie Williams.
And now we're talking about what we originally wanted to do this back when Halloween was around, but we figured we kind of finish off what we did with the horror retrospectives with one of the most popular franchises from the 80s from the mind of Clive Barker called Hellraiser. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hellraiser actually started out with a book that was by Clive Barker called The Hellbound Heart, which I've actually read, that was the basis for Hellraiser, where you pretty much have a story involving a man who buys a puzzle box from a merchant, and this is a man who wants to pretty much experience a lot of pain and everything. So, both the book and the movie deal with a lot of mechanism, or however you pronounce it, basically dealing with a lot of pleasure with pain. And I gotta tell you right now, growing up, Hellraiser used to be one of those films that used to always scare the shit out of me when I was little, because I remember when I used to watch this all the time on TV when they showed a lot of like HBO and shit.
Yeah,
I used to always be
I've seen that. I also remember going into video stores and seeing the cool cases and stuff, and I remember my first time I ever seen Hellraiser was the poster of, I believe it was either 1 or 3, it was both of them two, and it was the one where he's like, got
he's grinning, and he's got the puzzle box,
and he's got the
pins in his head.
And I remember 2 posters. It was the first one, and I remember the other one, Hell on Earth, where he's actually, New York's in the background.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was the first time.
Yeah, and so growing up, that you can tell that this is one of those kind of films that when I watched it, I always found it as one of those movies that deal with it was the first time, it was one of the earliest films I watched that was dealing with a lot of like demons and shit. So this movie gave me a lot of nightmares when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so I did this, actually, for those of you who have been following me for a while, I actually did a video back when I was on YouTube, or back when I was using my old Blip profile, where I talked about the Hellraiser series. And it's deleted now, but I remember I did something like that where I was talking about them individually. But, yeah, the first Hellraiser, which came out in 1987, like, this was one of the films I grew up with that I remember, like, watching a lot from Blockbuster and stuff.
And it's the one that's really, even though the other ones would be really good, we'll talk about that later, but this is the most iconic one that's talked about the most.
Yeah, because basically the story deals with, you have a man named Frank Cotton who buys this puzzle box from this merchant, and he wants to basically, because he has really no life, he wants to experience a lot of pleasure with pain. And so he buys this puzzle box that while he's solving this box, he realizes that there's different techniques that this box can do that's going to like different like areas when he's trying to solve it. And while he's opening the box, he starts to realize there's a lot of shit around him that's pretty much open a gateway. And it can pretty much deal with either opening a gateway to hell or going to heaven. So it's almost like a middle ground. And when he opens this box, of course, we get the awesome scene, the most iconic scene where the pit fucking chains come out and pull him inside there.
Yep.
So the rest of the film deals with a family.
Pretty brutal, too.
Yeah, it was.
Slowly, and you actually see the skin. It looks like real skin getting pulled and hooked on it, which was pretty gruesome.
Yeah, and then we start to get our earliest glimpses of seeing Pinhead and along with the other Cenobites.
Which was their first time coming out.
Yeah.
Seeing them on the big screen.
And when this film came out, they weren't actually called, the main Cenobite, the main demon in the film was not actually called Pinhead. In the credits, he was just listed as the lead Cenobite.
Yeah.
So when we see them, you see a lot of what they're doing. They're basically torturing him to death.
Yeah.
But they're basically draining his blood.
Yeah.
So the rest of the film deals with his brother, Larry Cotton.
This is like years later.
No,
was this days later or what?
It's like days or something later.
It was in that house.
It was in the same house.
Same house, yeah.
So in the same house, you have a family that moves in. Larry Cotton, played by Andrew Robinson, who, if you may remember, was from Child's Play 3, he played that barber.
Barber, yep.
And him and his wife are moving into the house, and they're also having his daughter, Christy Cotton, played by Ashley Lawrence, that moves in there. Well, not moves in there, but comes to visit her dad. And so, as the movie goes along, you start to see that there's an incident that happens. When they're moving in, you start to see that Larry Cotton gets his hand cut by this nail, which has this blood go down on the floor that creates pretty much basically, in a way, brings back the dead. Because this blood brings back...
a bloodline of his.
The bloodline of his brings back Frank Cotton back.
Yep.
And so, as you start to see when you start to see Frank come back, that scene, like, where he's, you know, just in, like, the weird, like, skin and bones and shit, that's really fucking terrifying.
Yeah, and you gotta think, this movie was from the 80s, so this shit is, like, really, like, fucking, you know, like we've talked in many of our retros, 80s was the decade of no limits. Like, sky is the limit. And their fucking movies are brutal and gory, and I love that shit. And this shit was really great practicals.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, this shit looks real, like you tear, like, your tissues. It's like muscle and tissue. And it's just gore and blood. I fucking loved it. Well, anyways, Frank is now playing a guy, which is kind of like you think of the Pinhead and Cenobites as bad people, but you also got another villain, Frank, which is kind of like, he's a dick.
He's basically an anti-villain, because, well, he's basically a villain of his own, because this entire film deals with him trying to get his skin back. So there's a story that involves him and the woman who is Julia, played, I forgot the actress's name, but she's the wife of Larry, but because there's a backstory they later reveal where Julia was actually fucking Frank behind his back while they were married.
Yep.
Or before they got married, actually.
Yep.
So, because that's his former lover, he wants to use her as leverage to pretty much bring victims in to kill them and get their skin.
Basically, she goes and whores herself out, goes on dates, meets guys, brings them back thinking they're going to get some, you know, pussy, and kills them.
Yeah, in the most gruesome ways, too, especially that scene where she takes that hammer and starts bashing that dude's fucking skull in.
Yeah. And didn't she stab somebody? Mm-hmm. Like, she stabbed that one,
It's that one dude. And then there's another part where Frank is, like, taking the dude's head and, like, basically devouring his skull or something.
And eating it and shit like that,
Yeah. So they get killed. These victims get killed in such gruesome ways more than probably what the Cenobites later do. Because really, if you break it down, this is the only Hellraiser film where the lead Cenobites don't really do much.
They don't do much, and I hate to compare it because it's not nothing. It's nowhere near as bad as these other ones in the future. But it kind of reminds me of not having Pinhead a lot like those films was. It's like, but it's its own original film,
right?
You know,
because
they didn't think they were going to make a big franchise out of this, so
right, because the basis of the book, from going back to the book again, the book deals with that too, because in the book, the Cenobites weren't always the main focus.
Like you said, in the first one, he's not called Pinhead. Their intentions was to not make a franchise out of this, but it got big.
But as the movie goes along, you start to see that Christy Cotton, played by Ashley Lawrence, the daughter, is trying to piece together what's going on, because she starts to notice things that are upstairs and stuff. And so she basically finds out where Frank is at in the attic.
Yeah,
and
he's all bloodied
up, and he's basically trying to he's almost getting his skin back.
Yep.
And then they think that she goes nuts, so she gets put in a psych ward, and that's when she finds the box. And then she solves it, and then she makes a deal with the Cenobites to try to get Frank. If she gives the Cenobites Frank, then they'll spare her life.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time we get introduced to Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley, and I gotta tell you right now.
Oh, before all that, we also get the bum, the famous bum.
Right, there's I want to tell you about that.
That eats crickets a lot.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to tell you about that. The bum, from what I remember, from what I was hearing, is actually the engineer.
I know.
In the book, the book goes into a lot more detail about this. In the book, the engineer is basically the head person that is the boss.
He's the Thanos
of the Cenobites.
Yeah, the Cenobites. He's the king of all.
But because they had to kind of focus a little bit more, to kind of change some aspects, they didn't focus too much on that in the first film. Yeah. So the first film, he's just a bum, but he's basically like a guardian. He's like watching over people.
Yeah, and it's funny because if you watch the old franchise, you'll notice that the engineer takes bum bodies all the time.
He does,
like, he's in bums in like all the movies. I was like, you got a thing with bums, dude?
Yeah.
But anyways, I remember this from when I was a kid, and what used to creep me out was I remember vividly from that film, and it actually stuck out more than anything in the film as a kid, was the bum eating crickets. Which made me
in the pet shop.
Yeah, it grossed me the fuck out. It still does, man.
Yeah.
I can handle blood and guts. I love watching hearts explode and brains and stuff, but when it comes to bugs, that shit is nasty. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. But we get to Pinhead.
We get the main baddie, Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley, and this is where we get the most iconic point. And this is weird because throughout the film, you're kind of getting glimpses of Pinhead, but this is where you get his first introduction, where he's like, "We are sometimes called angels, explorers," and then he says, he makes a deal with, or Kirsty makes a deal with Pinhead where she's trying to give Frank to him, and he says, if you try to escape us, we'll tear your soul apart.
Yeah. And then you get the famous line, Jesus wept.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, as the movie goes along, you already start to see that Larry is pretty much is oblivious to what's happening around him, so he doesn't know anything what's happening with Frank.
Yeah.
So when we get to our climax, you find out that Larry actually gets killed by Frank because Frank actually takes his skin and puts it over him, and now he has full skin. Yep. And that's where we get this, where he pretty much betrays Julia, kills her, and then in the attic, he tries to kill Kirsty, but then he gets fucking taken by Pinhead, and they start tearing his ass into fucking chains.
Fucking everything was tearing him apart.
Yeah.
And they did that famous Jesus wept, and he explodes. But this is a gory part because it's famous for its skin stretching, skin ripping, pouring, blood gush. Oh my god, it was brutal. I loved it too.
Oh yeah, that scene alone right there is one of the most hardcore that I've seen. This is what set the ground for Hellraiser.
Yeah, and it did, and that's when it knew it was going to start doing something bigger than what they thought it was doing. Then he had that boyfriend following her around, which I didn't remember that.
Well, yeah, that was basically just trying to give more humanity for the character of Christy Cotton, because he really doesn't come into play until the last half, where he's just kind of thrown in there. Because the rest, after he dies, after Frank dies, we pretty much have Kirsty trying to escape from the Cenobites, where she used the box to summon them back to hell.
Yep.
And so we get to our climax, which involves her trying to escape from this weird, demon thing that looks has this weird face.
Like a dragon.
Like a dragon or something.
Type thing.
And then the house explodes, and then they leave. And then we see the engineer again, where it's the bum, but he turns into this weird dragon, where he flies off. Yep. And the movie ends.
Yep.
And so, overall, I really loved Hellraiser growing up, and to this day, it's still one of my all-time favorite films, and it deals with not only basically dealing with a lot of great, not only is it just a lot of good practical effects like we usually see in a lot of 80s horror films, but it deals with a lot of how Clive Barker does with his stories. He loves that pleasure with pain kind of vibe going for it. So overall, I give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I liked it, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So after the success of Hellraiser, which it wasn't a huge hit, but it was at least sparked a lot of ground for the franchise as a whole. And so after the success of Hellraiser, we got to the next one, which was not directed by Clive Barker, but it was written by him, I believe, or produced by him. Yeah. And it's called Hellbound or Hellraiser II, which basically picks up right where the first one
it's
left off.
Right off.
Right.
Yeah.
And he even uses footage from the first film.
Yep.
And the thing is with that one, believe it or not, that was actually the first one I saw when I was younger, when I went to Blockbuster. I saw that one before I seen the first one. So actually, I watched them out of order when I was younger.
Yeah, I remember I seen scenes of 3 before all of them, but mainly I've watched the full first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I believe I actually skipped 2 because I didn't know. I was not paying attention. I was so young, I didn't know. And I remember I caught 3 on HBO, and then I watched 2.
That's how I did, too. Yeah, I remember catching 3 on HBO.
Because 1 and 3 would always be on TV or HBO, but they'd always skip 2 for some reason. I don't get that. Well, I was like, what the fuck? It's you don't care about the other fucking one?
I know. Well, that's the weirdest thing. I would always catch 2 on, regular cable, on AMC.
They would do it on, fucking straight censored. But 1 and 3 would get fucking HBO.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 would always be on Showtime or HBO. It'd always be on. Yeah. Those channels. But anyways, Hellraiser 2, Hellbound.
But anyway, with Hellraiser 2, for me growing up with this one, this probably was I can tell you right now, this one not only...
What's alright, so we get to the story, yep.
Okay, we get in the story that involves picking up right where the first one ends, where we have Christy Cotton pretty much trying to escape. She escapes the house, and then she gets sent to the insane asylum, where she's being approached by Dr. Channard, who is trying to question her about what happened with the first film. And she's telling him that these fucking Cenobites tried to kill her, and her dad went insane. Or her dad got killed by her family.
Uncle. And they still haven't found no evidence, and they just pinned her with the murders and gave her insanity charge. Yep.
And then we get that like scene where the two cops go inside that house, and they find the bed that Julia slept on, and that pretty much like... it's like very bloodied, and like there's chains and shit on it.
Yeah, they see all that shit, but they don't have no evidence of the bodies, but they give her insanity, so, you know.
Yeah. So as the film goes along, you start to see that Kirsty is trying to cope with this other doctor who does believe her of the situation, because he's trying to help her and everything, and she's trying to find a way to escape. And at the same time, you're dealing with Dr. Channard, who is dealing with his own problems by having this girl who is like this blonde mute woman who can't really talk too well, called Tiffany.
Tiffany, yeah.
Who
kind of made me think of the girl from Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Yeah, she kind of looks like Patricia Arquette.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're having that storyline where Dr. Channard is pretty much, as the movie goes along, you start to see that he's piecing together certain things about what happened with the Julia character from the first one, and then you start to see that he's actually doing what Frank did in the first one, because what happens is he lures a victim inside this room because he brings in the bed that Julia died on. He brings in the bed that's all bloody, and he brings this victim in there where he's basically cutting his fucking skin off.
Well, basically, he took what the evidence was from what Christy was saying, and then he realized, piecing together, that bed must be something to do with it. So he brings that same exact bed, and he makes that one dude. I remember the dude twirling the box. He forces him to do it.
Yeah, he forces him to do it, but then he also... Well, no, what he does... No, he was having Tiffany do it, because he was having Tiffany solve the box and trying to summon the demons, while at the same time, he was at his house, I believe... I think it was in the same asylum, where he's having this patient pretty much cut himself to try while he's on the bed. So no, he doesn't solve the box. The victim.
No, I'm not saying he's solving the box. Somebody was playing with the box.
It was Tiffany. Tiffany was the one that was playing with the box.
Yeah. So, anyways, he's on the bed, and this guy's like, I guess you could assume he's a cutter.
Yeah. No. He has like a fear of like insects, so he's like paranoid that the insects are on him. He's like, get them off me. Yeah. So Dr. Channard gives him a fucking glass, and he starts cutting himself. That shit they go into detail with.
I know.
They start like showing all the fucking graphic.
Yeah, I know. He was tearing the fuck out of his own stuff. I was like, damn. And he's sitting there screaming.
He's like, get him off me.
Yep.
And so, after that happened, you start to see that Julia, all of a sudden, like, much like in the first film, she becomes like Frank, where she comes out of the bed and grabs the dude and starts, like, killing him and whatever.
And tearing him apart. Shredding his fucking ass. And then she comes out, like he said, like Frank, where he has no... You see the muscles, the muscle tissues, and the blood. No skin. It's exactly like Frank.
Yeah. Yep. And so, as the film goes along, you start to see that... pretty much like the first film, Julia has to lure victims in there, or she uses Dr. Channard to lure victims in there to get skin back, like the first film. Yep. And so the movie at first it kind of threw me off, because I thought they were pretty much rehashing the first one again. Yeah. But then this is what kind of got to me. The rest of the film, after that happens, where she starts to get her skin back, it actually turns gears on us, where we're dealing with another plot involving Tiffany, where she gets actually transported to hell. Yeah. And then Kirsty goes into hell to try to find her.
I can't remember. Didn't Frank come in this?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So we actually expand upon the plot in this one, because Kirsty actually goes inside hell to search for Tiffany, because she solved the box.
Yep, they're now officially in hell, yep.
Yes. And so now this film actually expands upon the first one by showing more of what hell looks like, which I find very fascinating, because the production design when he gets to hell is very visually great.
And you can tell they've really built their studios for those rows.
Oh yeah,
you know, they did really good on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you start seeing kind of like a stop motion or like a computeristic. Kind of remind me of Ghostbusters-ish type thing when they did the distant shots. Then they actually, when they did the studio close-up shots, you see the very detailed designs, because they made everything all Lucifer-ish.
Yeah.
Like Satan type shit, so...
Exactly. So, as you start to see the movie, as you start to see them go into hell, you also get to see we get reintroduced to Pinhead again, and this time we get other Cenobites coming into too. Like we get the fat one again. We get the chatter dude,
and then the
girl, yeah. And we also get another plot that's basically involving Dr. Channard, because he gets transported to hell. In a way, he becomes pretty much a fucking Cenobite himself, because Julia betrays him by sticking him into this area where he's in hell, and he becomes he gets killed off, but then he becomes a Cenobite.
And he gets torn. Don't he get? He
gets this weird
the thing shoots in his brain, and it tearing him his head and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's all slattered. Now Frank comes in.
Yeah, Frank comes in this play. Okay, so while
it was around when
Kirsty is looking for Tiffany, and while she's looking for him, she comes across Frank, who is revived as human. So he's now human again, and it reunites with Julia and everything. And then, pretty much as payback, Julia kills him. Yeah. As payback from the first film. Yeah. So he gets killed off, and then we get to our climax, which is probably one of the best climax I've seen in this franchise, where Kirsty confronts gets Tiffany, but then they come across Pinhead again. Yeah. And then we get something that I have pretty much the only time we've ever seen this, where we get another Cenobite coming in who's actually Dr. Channard.
And he's actually a step below of the engineer. He's already promoted as this big bad motherfucker. Yeah, like Hellraiser can't defeat this guy hardly.
Well, because before leading to that, you have Kirsty trying to negotiate a deal with the Cenobites by saying that they can give her, I think, from what I remember, I think they were trying to get that she reminds Pinhead of who he really was, because she has a picture of him when he was in World War I, Captain Elliot Spencer, which we later reveal in the third film. But she gives him a picture, and then he starts to realize of who he was again. He's like, yes, I do remember. And so that's when we get Dr. Channard coming in, and that's when you start to see this battle that takes place, where Dr. Channard and the Cenobites have a fight that goes on.
Yeah, and Dr. Channard is actually fucking taking out all the Cenobites in one lick. Bow! And then the badass Cenobites are dying easily. He's just fucking tearing them all apart.
Well, and what's really fascinating is that Dr. Channard
he's fucked.
Oh yeah, especially he has this weird thing on his head.
Didn't it kind of remind you of a mixture of The Thing?
Yeah.
And Silent Hill?
Yeah, it did.
A mixture of that type shit. It was pretty fucking creepy. He was really fucking...
He was really fucking scary. Yeah. But, yeah, he basically kills them off by turning them into human, because after he, kills them, they turn into their human form.
It's not that they turn into human form, but Pinhead pretty much makes a deal with Kirsty, and they kind of ally with each other. They're all right, we're on the same team.
He's because
the thing is when they go in the battle, Pinhead starts realizing that everything he's doing is not doing jack shit to this fucking dude.
Yeah, because he starts using the chains and shit on him, but it realizes it don't fucking work. It's what the fuck?
Yeah, and then that's where he you start seeing the human form in them, and then fucking that Channard guy fucking tears him. Oh, yeah. Pinhead a new asshole.
Yeah, because, first he starts, taking all of his pins out and shit by turning his face into human form, and then he looks at Kirsty, and this is the only time we ever see Pinhead have, a genuine moment, where he's looking at Kirsty, and he gives her a smile, where he's and then she has to leave, and then he takes his knife, like he's about to fight, and then fucking Channard cuts his throat off.
And you saw that blood.
Yeah,
yeah. That was fucking brutal shit, man.
Which is really the first time we ever see Pinhead get actually killed, you know?
And now Channard's trying to battle Chrissy and Tiffany.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then we get to the final ending, which involves them escaping, and you see that Julia gets killed because she is what was it? From what I remember, didn't he kill her, or did she fall off that cliff?
I can't remember that one, that scene.
Oh, I think I remember.
No, she tries to fall in love with him and tries to do that love shit while Christy and Tiffany are about to escape and trying to pull some maneuver where they can close hell completely and close them off, and then they can't ever escape. And then basically Julia is not really, she's like an anti-hero, she's not trying to side with Christy and them. But then she's doing that, trying to, like, fuck, because she wants to bone him or some shit.
Yeah.
And that's where he, like, fuck you, you know, kills her and stuff. But I think that's where Christy, at the same time, while he's doing that, he kills Julia. That's when they escape and finally break the barrier before he can go after him or some shit like that. Yeah.
And then that's also, we get that twist where you think it's Julia still trying to kill Tiffany, but it's actually Kirsty in disguise as in Julia's skin.
Yeah.
So we get to that where they finally escape from the hospital, and that was pretty brutal. And before they went to hell, that you see all the victims like in the fucking have puzzle boxes, and they have like chains and shit on them, and they're all killed in the bed.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes, he was testing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was pretty fucking brutal and stuff. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I gotta say this, and this is a very rarity because I know a lot of people do this. A lot of people really I get what everybody's doing because generally I respect the original over any of the other movies that come out of a franchise. I'm generally always number one. Well, some franchise like that, like, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street. But anyways, with this one, I'm going to go and say this one's my favorite out of the franchise. It's a tad bit over one as the best of the franchise. And like I just said, 2, I think, is the best one in the franchise. Hellbound, I'm going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's the best out of the franchise.
Yeah, this is the same thing with me. Like, because they...
It's a tad bit better than the original. Just a tad bit.
Well, I think also, the thing is with me, like, I love this film a lot more than the first one. Not only did I grow up with this more because I rented it from Blockbuster a lot, but also because I like the fact that they were expanding more with the story and how they were able to take a lot more risks. This one, like, I love the first one, don't get me wrong, but because they do so much more with the second one, I'm going to give this one a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, well, it's a 9.5 out of 10. It's still, there's nothing, it's still, 9.5, there's no flaws, you know?
Right.
I mean, they could have maybe did some more backstory of more stuff, but that's all that was really, and that's not really nothing wrong with it because they expanded more in the feature.
Right.
But if I was to see the movie as it is and didn't know a 3 was coming out of 4, I would want more in the backstory. But other than that, it's my favorite out of the franchise. Like you said, no disrespect to the first one. You are still the original. I love you. You're my second favorite. All that stuff. But you did keep it kind of just simple, and this one did expand upon better.
Right. And so yeah, this one I consider my most favorite. Now, after this one, believe it or not, when the third one came out, now it wasn't until probably when I watched it on HBO, I saw a clip of the third one where, okay, we'll get into this. We'll cut that out. Okay. Now we get to Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, which actually took a hiatus. Like, it took about a few years to come out because, believe it or not, this is the first one that was actually produced by Dimension Films, which would later become the staple for the series.
And we wouldn't get Kirsty back in this one.
Well, okay, here's the thing. We'll get to that.
Yep.
This one deals with a club owner who's called JT. Now, JT is a guy who makes a deal with this bum who, at this point, I'm calling the fucking engineer because I'm pretty sure this art dealer is the engineer.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, this dealer is the engineer.
Yeah.
So he comes across a bum who gives him a deal for the box, and so he takes that box into his consideration. Or no, I'm sorry, no. We didn't bring this up in the second one. I'll go into this. At the end of the second one, it shows that because Pinhead was defeated, Pinhead is now living in this weird, like, statue kind of thing where it, like, twists around and all that. So, instead of the puzzle box, JT gets a hold of this, like, weird art relic where it's basically Pinhead inside.
He's into art. He likes buying art. This is now taking place in New York years later. He buys his art thing, and Pinhead is actually stuck in this. It's like, I don't know if he knows that, but he likes the artistic of the horror with it. The bodies are all stuck in there. Basically, it's because
that's how his club looks throughout it too.
Yeah.
So that's what the Cenobites are inside. So as the movie goes along, we also get involved in the plot involving this reporter who is trying to get a story involving what's going, trying to basically make a living to try to get a story involving JT and all that. So we basically have 2 separate storylines going on in this one. because the main storyline that we deal with is JT, who is trying to run his club and everything, but he's basically living his life trying to be, free spirit, fucking women every night and all that shit. And the movie goes along, you start to see that one night when he's fucking this one girl, he realizes that that when she gets killed, that she gets killed by remember, after he fucks this one girl, the girl is trying to leave, but then she backs herself up to that statue where fucking Pinhead takes her ass and with chains and kills her, and she pulls her fucking skin off. Yeah, and that was pretty graphic when they did that.
Yeah, it was gruesome. Yeah,
where she's all in skeleton form, like over the first one.
Yep.
So she gets killed, and then pretty much Pinhead is talking to him from that statue that he's in, saying that you need to bring me more victims like the first two movies. So it has.
Basically have been torn down. Pinhead's basically been torn down so bad he's became a freak.
Yeah, so he can't. The only way he's going to be able to escape is if he gets more victims like the first two movies. Yep. So as the movie goes along, you start to see that JT is also trying to get a hold of his ex-girlfriend, who is with that reporter girl we mentioned earlier, because there was a story that the girl was trying to get from this girl, because she was she was with the guy before, and so as while that's happening, you're starting to see also something I really like. This is one of the biggest praise I have for this one. Throughout the film, we're getting glimpses where the main girl, the reporter girl, I forgot her name in the film, but she starts to have these dream sequences where she's meeting Captain Elliot Spencer, who's actually Pinhead. Mm-hmm. And we started to reveal in his backstory that he was actually a captain in World War I. Yeah. So, we actually, it was established in 2 in that flashback at the beginning, that he was in World War I, but this one they go into more expand upon with why he became who he was. Yeah. Because pretty much he was separated from his unit in World War I, and so he wanted to isolate himself from people and try to experience more pain without having to have any, would try to do like Frank did. Yeah. So I really like this backstory here because this is the first time we actually get to see Doug Bradley actually in his human form. Well, it's the second time we see Doug Bradley in his human form.
But you see more of
you see more of him as Elliot Spencer. So I liked where they're going with this. And here is where I can say one of the things I really like, too, is... Okay, so we get to the part where the girl we talked about earlier, the kind of goth-looking girl, the ex-girlfriend, she gets lured into JT's apartment and she's about to get killed. But then JT fucking gets killed by Pinhead because he takes his ass and fucking, uses chains and shit. Yeah. But then, here's where the movie kind of really gets me. So, Pinhead gets a deal with the girl to try to free him, basically. And then when he gets freed, guess what? We actually become Hell on Earth, because the scene following after that is one of the biggest, iconic moments of the series, where there's this club that JT owns has this rock band playing, and it's, pretty heavy metal.
It's a heavy metal, and it's a popular place.
Yeah. And so, before anything starts happening, you start to notice some shit around. The walls have, these weird mannequin arms that are, squeezing shit, and pretty much the Cenobites are, taking over. Yeah. And so...
And this was, one of the most gruesomest shit
we
ever.
Get this part where a fucking explosion happens, and people are, falling off and shit, and then you start to see Pinhead in there, and he's like, shall we begin? Yeah. Basically talking like Khan and Star Trek Into Darkness. Yep. And then you start to see everyone fucking get killed in gruesome ways. In
gruesome different ways, and he's making, objects come to life inside there, a plate turning, a spider or some shit like that. And you had the famous CD things where the dude's like, what the fuck?
What the fuck? And then the CDs
went in there, and he actually becomes a Cenobite.
Yeah, because he's basically created his own victims, which I actually like, because I know some people, this is the only thing some people are thrown off. They don't like some people were thrown off by the fact that he's pretty much like Freddy, because he's laughing and killing all his victims out of the box. But you gotta think, if he's out of the box, his whole plan was to take over pretty much Earth. And so the movie goes along, this entire scene where he's killing people in such gruesome ways, this is to me how Pinhead should do. Yeah. Especially that part where that girl gets killed by that fucking icicle from Pinhead. Yep. Because that was the first time I ever watched the movie. And
what was some other gruesome deaths?
The part where the dude gets like that, he gets like that
thing in his mouth.
That thing in his mouth. Yeah. And then it has like the vines or whatever wrapped around his head.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then you had the part where the dude was like hanged up upside down or something, or no, he was pulled back from there was like 5 people in a row like stuck by chains.
Yep.
Yeah, and then there was a part where the people are running to the fucking to the exit, and then and then you just see the blood coming in there, and he's fucking like stabbing motherfuckers left and right.
Yep.
He's going.
Yep.
So, man, everybody gets killed in there.
Everybody gets killed, and then they actually take the fights to the streets. Mm-hmm. And this is actually evolving like humans versus demon type shit.
Yeah, because the reporter that we mentioned earlier actually is, as she discovers that pretty much Pinhead is free, and she's trying to get the box and everything, she is trying to escape, and then she comes across police officers, which are actually trying to kill the Cenobites, but they realize these fucking dudes won't go down because they're trying to shoot them, and they won't die.
Yep, and then they get killed off one by one in horrible ways. Explosions.
Yeah, explosions.
That one had flames on him or some shit.
Yeah, there was that one dude who had he had like flamethrowers or something on his arm, and then
he burned those officers to death and shit. Yeah.
And then there was the other guy, the reporter had a friend who was the cameraman, where he pretty much becomes a Cenobite after she finds him at the club dead.
Yeah.
He becomes the one with the camera guy, where he's like, "That's a wrap."
Yeah.
So they do kind of add some like funny dark humor in this film.
Which was cool. Yeah, I did like how that was my thing with this film. I did like how we actually get to see how these Cenobites actually get to become Cenobites. How they die in gruesome ways and they actually become them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really liked how they were able to take that approach, because that's something I always kind of wondered what they would do in this series. Mm-hmm. So we get to, as the movie goes on, you start to see that she's trying to finally stop Pinhead. And then we get something that's really cool toward the end. We get to our climax where the reporter girl, she actually confronts Pinhead in a church. And then he does this cool thing where he's screwing with the priest, where he takes a nail and starts slamming himself with his hands and
like
stuff.
Jesus.
Like Jesus. Where he does like this pose kind of like Jesus.
Yeah.
And all that. And then we get to, later when we get to the final ending, it involves actually Pinhead versus fucking Captain Elliot Spencer as a human self. So
why did that came?
Because from what I remember was because the reporter girl goes inside like this in the box or whatever. Like I think she actually summons him or something like that.
Like the real guy, yeah.
Like the real guy,
like
and
the
then
human form of him,
yeah. And then so it's him and him trying to kill each other, and they merge their faces together, which was pretty practical when they went into that shit.
Yeah,
you know, and so basically, the movie pretty much ends with her. They get their faces get sucked inside to each other, and no, I'm sorry. She takes she basically takes the puzzle box and she stabs Pinhead, and because pretty much the puzzle box kills him.
Yeah, that's when it turned into that dagger thing.
Yeah, the dagger,
dagger,
and she stabs him.
Yep.
So basically, the movie ends with her leaving the box there where this building
construction, and it builds in,
which leads actually into Bloodline.
Yeah.
So,
anyways, 3, I enjoyed it. It's my third favorite of the franchise.
Yeah, I like it. It had some problems. I think probably. Yeah, I guess I probably could have seen more of Hell on Earth per se. They could have done more damage. Instead, because the Hell Club scene I love.
Armageddon.
That's what I'm saying. More Armageddon shit, where buildings explode and all that shit.
Yeah, real brutal. It just felt like it was the Cenobites just really just came on Earth. That was the Hell on Earth. That could have done a lot more. I thought they could have been more human, like apocalyptic shit, where you actually see them slaughtering. They could have done more slaughter, indicating that they're almost taking over Earth. Yeah, you don't get that feel.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but it's
still fun. It's still like fun film.
I still like it though with what they did with it.
It's considered one of the most brutalist out of the entire franchise.
And with that, I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10.
I'm gonna agree with you on this one. 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah. So between this and the next one, since Dimension Films pretty much own the rights of the franchise, we got... Now, here's the weirdest thing. The next film we're going to talk about, Hellraiser Bloodline, actually had a lot of development problems because, believe it or not, this is the first one out of the franchise that had that was literally hell behind the scenes.
Yep.
Okay, so the original script they had in mind, they had the director, Kevin Yeager, I believe the guy's name was, and the director had a vision in mind where he was going to pretty much take the first half of the film, pretty much be like a prequel to the first film, build the backstory up and everything like that. And it wasn't until the studio got involved where they wanted to do more things involving Pinhead. So actually, we're seeing a different film than what they had in mind. Because from what I've seen in the original footage they had in mind was that the Cenobites actually came a lot earlier in the film. Yeah. Because the story involves, as we see in the beginning, a man. This is in the this is like in the future. Like it's like in the 2100s.
Yeah, something. This is one does like more like in space type thing.
Yeah, kind of like an alien or something like that.
Yeah. So this is like pretty much Pinhead in space.
Yeah. Which became pretty much a staple. Well, no, it pretty much started after the whole Critters in Space kind of thing.
That's when
we got a lot of the whole in space kind of movies.
Leprechaun, Jason,
Hellraiser.
Like you get what we're saying, but yeah, it starts out as a like you said in the 2100s with the one dude. He's a toy maker. He's family of a toy maker.
Yeah, the merchant. Le Merchant.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's basically we see in the beginning that he's using like a computer generated, or he's using a robot to open the box. Yeah. Because he realizes the dangers that were involving with Pinhead, that he's trying to use a robot instead of anything else. So he opens the box and the demons or something. But what's cool about this is that he's keeping the demons trapped in this room where they can't get out. Yeah. So he keeps them in this area where they can't get out, and then this special forces team comes in where they're questioning him of why he's doing all this. And then as the movie goes along, you start to see flashbacks involving what happened in the beginning.
It's basically, don't they pull I believe they pull a Saw 2 in this one.
They do.
Where it's basically like him and Pinhead are actually having to sit down and talk.
No,
not really a sit down and talk, but like pretty much telling him his history.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, okay, the movie basically deals with 3 generations. Okay, the first segment, the first half of the film deals with flashbacks involving when he was a toy maker, which is actually a prequel to Hellraiser, because this is in the 1700s or something like that, where he was a toy maker who actually created the box. So we actually get a lot of backstory involving the Lamont configuration, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you get that, and it kind of gives you that interview with the vampire Phil, like
the aristocrats,
the Brits, like kind of Phil,
like the Victorian age,
the Victorian age,
or something like that. Yeah, where you're starting to see a lot of aristocrats involved and everything like that. So he was a toy maker where he invented the box, and he tried to make a deal with this really like rich kind of dude where he wanted to sell his box to, and then he didn't realize that person who he sold the box to was going to use it for his own pleasure by using a girl to pretty much be brought back to life after he killed her. Yeah. So after he poisoned her, he kills her, and then he summons her back by using the box.
Yep. And it was that dark hair.
Yeah. Angelique.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as the movie goes along, after that, you start to see that the toy maker got betrayed because Angelique, who's now summoned, actually killed the fucking toy maker dude. Or I'm sorry, the rich, dude,
the white hair dude. Yeah.
And so it killed him and wants to pretty much take over everything as her own, or take over everything.
She basically, I remember she was kind of pretty much trying to play the Frank Pinheadish type feel, like she was trying to run things.
Yeah. It's so.
But the thing is, if this is set in the 1700s, technically Pinhead is not even invented yet because he's a World War I.
Well, see, this is the thing, though. A little backstory about this. There actually is a deleted scene that reveals that they had in mind that this doesn't exist anywhere. But from what I was reading about, the Pinhead actually came into effect years before he was even invented in this scene, because there's a part where when they summon the box and she becomes, alive again, Pinhead was actually supposed to come in that scene. He was actually supposed to be there, and the Cenobites were supposed to come, and they were supposed to be. This is probably what would have ruined the movie. the Pinheads, the Cenobites, were supposed to be wearing makeup like aristocrats. So that probably would have took away the serious tone they were going for.
And now so weird to say, do we just sum up that this is a continuity issue?
Basically, well, this is probably why I think for purposes of the theatrical version, to go with it, this was a good thing. So, in this regard, when we have the backstory involving the puzzle box, I liked what they did with it because it sets up that because the box itself is old, it's very old, so it can summon any kind of demon. So Angelique technically is the oldest demon before Pinhead. So, So, anyway, she kills the toy maker and his bloodline still drops, and then we get to, and you know what's really weird? That was one of the first movies involving Adam Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember he was the boyfriend of Angelique.
Yep.
So we get to the second part of the story, which involves the current times. Because if you remember at the end of the third movie, the box was dropped off at the construction site,
which
became that building
the toy company.
In the current part of the film. So this movie is not only a prequel, but it's also a sequel to the third movie.
Yep.
So we have the current this timeline, which involves the second generation of the toy maker, where he has a wife and child.
This is, like he said, it's right after 3.
Yeah, so he basically is hosting the segment. He's hosting this press conference for the opening of the building, and the building is basically the puzzle box.
He made, It's a puzzle box. Because the puzzle box actually becomes his bloodline. Yeah. It becomes a symbol of his family.
Yeah. And so he meets Angelique there, who is a descendant of the original person. Yeah. And they start to have an affair and everything like that. And basically, the film this is where we now get into Pinhead. So Angelique, because she wants to try to get his bloodline or try to use the toy maker for leverage to open the box, she summons Pinhead by using a security guard to open the puzzle box that was there at the construction site. Because this is years after that was
the one where she said she was gonna fuck him and do all kinds of stuff to him, and then that's whenever she opens that. But ain't this is the one where they bring the dog? They bring a dog.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Okay, so she brings in the security guard to open the box, and then the security guard, when he opens the box, he gets, much like the first film, he gets just like sucked in with the fucking chains.
Chains getting in his face, and he's screaming in pain, and he gets sucked right in.
And then we see Pinhead finally, where he is pretty much in cahoots with Angelique by trying to team up with her to get the toy maker. And so the rest of the film deals with the toy maker trying to save his family from Pinhead in this segment. So in this segment, he has to deal with Pinhead in order to try to pretty much complete his. He's building a project that's dealing with the puzzle box. So once he finishes the puzzle box, it's supposed to summon all of hell. Yeah. But also, what we did mention before we get to that, one of the most best scenes I love about this this part of the movie is the part with the security guards. Yeah. Remember
the one that bashed their heads? Yeah.
Okay, you have two security guards that are twin brothers. They go through to search what's happened in the building, and they realize Pinhead's there and Angelique, and then they
they enter this one area that's not even in the map of their building. Yeah. And it's kind of like, it feels like they're back on a spaceship type thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they confront Pinhead, and then Pinhead basically makes it to where their fucking heads like join together where they can never be separated.
Practicals were great in that. It looked like, oh my god, their skin was just sucking together and just pulling, and they became twins, like joined twins.
They'll never separate. Yep. So I really like that one. And then we get to our climax in this segment where the toy makers confront Pinhead, and he has to build the final project, and that's where we get that fucking dog that comes after his wife. Remember, because his wife and his son are trapped in this area.
Yeah, kind of remind me like Resident Evil type thing. Like this is like a dog where, like Frank, like all of them, their skin is torn off. Yeah, and it's muscly, and it's got that
where it's got the chatterbox.
Yeah, that chat thing. Yeah. That shit's pretty fucking scary. I remember that dog used to scare the fuck out of me.
Me too, when I was younger. Yeah, yeah. And so basically what happens is he gets killed by Pinhead after he basically because when he finalizes the project, it actually becomes a tool to kill Pinhead, and so because he realizes that it's a threat to him, he fucking cuts his head off.
Yeah, I remember he sticks the thing through his throat actually, and a chain. And it's like weird because I remember when I was watching it when I was younger, I was like, oh my god, they killed the main character off.
Yeah, I was like,
and
oh,
then it
man.
went through his throat, and then it went boom, and then chopped his head off, and then
yeah. But then, as we see after that,
he lets the kid and the
wife and him still live, and then Pinhead gets trapped in the puzzle box after that, and then we now get, because his bloodline's still spilled, we realize the future descendant is actually him. Well, at the beginning it's established all these were ancestors. Yeah. So the future version of himself.
Did he say something to the kid like "I'll see you soon" or some shit?
I think so.
Or I can't remember. Anyways.
But anyway, we now get to the future segment, which is the final act of the film, where after like in the beginning of the movie, when the Cenobites get loose, the team is investigating to see what's happening, and we get that really fucking gruesome scene where that black dude goes in there and he finds out what's happening, and then you see his skin like get torn off and shit by them chains.
I know, and then I think like all his insides were just pouring out and fucking.
I don't know. No, it just showed his face.
Oh, face. Oh no, something else. I was thinking.
No,
yeah.
It was but anyway. After he gets killed, the Cenobites get loose, and then we see that Pinhead is trying to confront. As it moves along, it basically becomes like Alien, because all the special forces, they're getting killed off one by one.
Yeah, in gruesome ways.
Especially that one dude who goes in that one room, and then he gets conjoined with those two twin dudes.
Oh yeah, where they rub their head.
Yeah,
on there, and he fucking
Yeah, that was pretty gruesome though, because you see like his face like
that was the guy. Well, not only that, that's the guy who lost all his fucking body parts.
Yeah,
like because he's becoming like the stomach, or like he really isn't gonna have anything. They're just adding on to themselves, but the guy just fucking is just pretty much just becoming disintegrating, and he's fucking just everything's just fucking torn apart.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah, it's like, okay. And it's funny because I was watching that scene, I was like, what, are you guys going to get 3 foot wider? But anyways.
But anyway, yeah, we also get to that other death scene, which is pretty cool with the dog. Remember, no, this is kind of funny. This is one of an obvious blooper part where the dude finds Pinhead, and then he tries to blast him, and then he runs off, and... I thought this made me laugh, where the dude's hiding, and you think Pinhead's not going to notice him, so he walks by, and he's like, oh, good, he's not going to find me. Yeah. And then the fucking dog eats his ass.
Yeah, and then he screams, ah!
Yeah. And then we get to our climax, which involves a pretty cool climax, where you get to see Pinhead confront the Toymaker, and he's talking about how the world's going to be his and everything, and then you see that the Toymaker is actually onside the ship with the girl that was part of the special forces, and they're actually on a space shuttle, and so when they're trying to leave, they leave Pinhead there to die, and they realize that the fucking ship becomes the box.
Yeah, the box, and it's funny, it becomes a box, but he thinks that they're in there, and he's talking to them, but then he realizes
it's
they're
a hologram. Yeah,
they're all holograms.
I thought that was
goes,
pretty clever.
Got your ass.
He's like, welcome to Oblivion.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh man. And then he blows up, which is pretty much, if you were...
No, well, you get that slow, like that scene where it's like, he's like shaking around and things slowly breaking apart and stuff. And he's like, you actually see in his face like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
No!
Yeah.
I've never been defeated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I am immortal.
Yeah. And he goes, like, no, you're not. I got you now. And he's like, no way. He's like shocked. And this is actually indicating this is it right here. This is the final movie.
Because, well, we'll get to it later.
And it does, actually, if you think about it, 1 through 4 actually is perfect.
It actually goes in order.
And these movies are not, none of them are nowhere clear, like, close being bad. Yeah. They could actually work, and that would be a perfect franchise right there. This Bloodline, a bloodline of together... in the fucking franchise. That's believable as fuck, dude.
And okay, overall though, I really do love Bloodline. Yeah, it has some problems with some outdated CGI that's in at the beginning scenes.
Like you said, the CGI and all that stuff, but I really liked
I love the story. The storyline was really great.
To be honest with you, I love like all the movies, but I think they wrote like a really hell of a storyline.
The backstory in this was really great, especially how they tie this stuff together with the puzzle box.
Yeah.
And I love the way they construct they structure the whole 3 generations thing, where you get past, present, and future.
That's what I'm saying. The other ones I love, and I do like them better than this one, but for Bloodline, out of all of them, they wrote a hell of a good story in this one. Like, the writing is actually really well, like, pretty good. Because you got to think, they're trying to deal with 3 different plots and conjoining them together in different segments. I actually thought I like that.
Now, granted, I probably would have preferred what the original script had, the original project direction they had in mind, because the movie did go through a lot of production hell when they brought this movie out. Yeah. Because, for example, they did have a lot more backstory involving Angelique, which I probably could have seen more.
Yeah, they could have seen more.
But I still appreciate what they did, because even though the movie was kind of messy in some parts, it still felt like it was a perfect closure.
Yeah, and then they had the continuity issue for a little bit that we don't get explained.
Yeah. Because
of the Angelique thing, and we don't know about that, but we could assume that. But like you said, like, it ends really well. It can end the franchise right here. This is perfect right here. And it's, like I said, I do like it a lot. I thought they spent a lot of good time writing this one compared to the other ones where they were really good, but they wrote, they're still standard horror films. This one I felt like they're really digging more deeper into a storyline more than anything.
Yeah.
And it was a lot calmer in that that thing, and I did enjoy that. I did like the guy who plays the toy maker.
And that's cool, funny, because the guy that plays him, believe it or not, looks strikingly like Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
For some reason. Like, the dude has his face.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really do like the toy maker. I forgot the dude's name. Bruce Ramsey. That's the guy's name.
Like I said, I like this one. I actually have this tied with 3 as my 3rd favorite, because 3 beats it in gore, but this one beats it on story.
Yeah.
But I still enjoy this one. It's kind of hard to choose, but I'm going to give it at least an 8 out of 10 this one.
Yeah, I'll give it at least about 8 out of 10 as well, because even though it's slightly like below 3 as far as some aspects, but I still love the story, they did with it.
Yeah, the story was well written compared to 3.
Yeah.
3 beats it in the gore and the funness, but as far as writing just a great story, 4 beats 3 in that. But 3, I still have a little bit more fun than 4. Like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are like fucking a great 4-pack right here. This is a great franchise right here. But anyways, yeah, like I said, 8 out of 10.
Fair enough.
For Bloodline.
All right, we'll be back with part 2 coming up here soon with the rest of the franchise. And what did you guys think of the first films? Comment below, and if you guys like we see here, you can check this more out on SoundCloud and on YouTube. And we'll become a part 2 of our franchise coming up here soon. We'll see you guys here later.
Later.